Hi, I'm Shira. I'm from LSE, and I'm going to be talking about applying the precautionary principle to the risk of a superintelligence. So, the precautionary principle is a principle that is meant to prevent existential risks and to prevent us from letting uncertainty about the chances of catastrophe be an excuse for inaction. So, according to the principle, if we are uncertain about those chances, we should err on the side of caution and adopt a better safe than sorry attitude. So, superintelligence is an intelligence that is far greater than that of the smartest human beings. And because it is highly capable, it could potentially enslave and even exterminate all humans. So, in his book, Superintelligence, Nick Bostrom lists several possible scenarios for existential risk from superintelligence. And each of them involves several technological capabilities. So, for example, a whole brain emulation scenario involves developing high scanning capabilities, developing an automated translator, turning scanned data into a 3D model, developing strong hardware, and not waiting until the control problem is solved. So now I'm going to talk about applying the precautionary principle by voting on a conjunction of potential actions. So as you can see from the whole brain emulation scenario, the existential risk from superintelligence can result from different combinations of several technological advancements, each of which is not harmful on its own. So, for example, strong hardware is not harmful on its own. So it is not enough to ask whether each single advancement individually violates the precautionary principle, as none of these advancements have any possibility of leading to catastrophe on their own. So, for example, advanced scanning capabilities, if we just ask whether they violate the precautionary principle, the answer would be no. So what should we do? We should adhere to the precautionary principle by addressing the combination of these potential actions. So how would this be done? Ideally, a group of agents would simultaneously vote on all actions that their combination, independent of other things, would cause existential risk. So on a complete scenario of a harmful superintelligence being developed. So how would this happen in practice? So all large-scale potential actions that could be relevant to a scenario of an existential risk from superintelligence should be put to a separate vote. So this means several different scenarios of achieving general intelligence before solving the control problem. So now I'm going to explain why voting on a conjunction adheres to the precautionary principle. So voting on a conjunction adheres to the better safe than sorry spirit of the precautionary principle, and specifically, it is equivalent to the false positive bias interpretation of the principle. So what is this interpretation? The false positive bias interpretation of the precautionary principle as interpreting the principle as a preference to falsely identify a causal connection between a possible action and an unacceptable harm, and thus to believe that the action is impermissible, rather than to deny a true causal connection and commit an impermissible action. So you can think of it as a shift in the burden of proof. So instead of needing to prove that an action is risky or potentially harmful and having a null hypothesis, we have the hypothesis that it is harmful and we need to prove that it isn't. So how is this similar to voting on a conjunction? So voting on a conjunction has the property of having a bias towards negative reliability. That is the probability of voting that X is false, given that it is false. So this reliability is much better than the positive reliability when voting on a conjunction. So this means that when a conjunction is impermissible, it is almost never accepted. So when voting on a conjunction, the positive reliability is just the reliability on a single conjunct to the power of the number of conjuncts. But the negative reliability is this reliability, which is actually much better, even if R is very low. It is going to give us a very good reliability. So how are these two things similar? So if we take a conjunction of K premises to be equivalent to the claim that a certain combination of acts is permissible, then false positive bias is equivalent to the bias towards having a higher negative reliability, as both of these biases can imply preferring to believe an action is impermissible when it is permissible than to believe an action is permissible when it is impermissible. In other words, they both adhere to the spirit of better safe than sorry. So it's a preference to be wrong about something being impermissible than to be wrong about it being permissible. Okay, so what is the conclusion from this? So by voting on a conjunction of potential actions, we are adhering to the spirit of the precautionary principle. The precautionary principle is considered to be the right approach towards existential risk. The risk from superintelligence is an existential risk, so we should vote on a conjunction of potential technological developments that could lead to superintelligence. And now, importantly, these different technological developments that are relevant to the same scenario or that we suspect could combined create this general intelligence rather quickly can come from different institutions or different companies. So this requires a collaboration between different companies and institutions and a certain coordinating body so that we can vote on these different scenarios together and have an implication from one on the other. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think a really fascinating approach. Yeah, if we can go Nat at the back.
Hi, I really enjoyed your talk. Thanks. I'm Natalie Jones from here at CSER. I was wondering if you could elaborate on who is the we who is doing the voting? You know, who are the agents who can vote in this idea?
Right, good. So it wasn't my focus here, but I think definitely the we should not be only interested parties that have a conflict of interest in voting on those things. I was imagining an overarching body of perhaps researchers, but it could potentially also be the general public. So one advantage of having many voters is that we already have one premise of the Condorcet-Jury theorem be right here, because we have a high reliability, even if the reliability on a single conjunct is low. So potentially having a lot of voters is a good idea as well.